Hello, everyone. Welcome. Head over to the chat and tell us where you are watching from. And if you're with young people, tell us what grade they're in and how many students are in your classroom with you. Make sure you chat to everyone.
Oh, look at that. Dallas, Texas, Redwood City, Houston, Texas, DC.
Lots of Texas. Oh man, some Maryland, some
Now
Minnesota.
it's really popping.
Yeah, now we're coming in. I can't even read.
Oh, I see fifth grade in Montclair Elementary, Oakland, California. That's where I am. I'm in Oakland, California.
Where are you, John?
I'm in Los Angeles, California, which is also California.
Very close.
I wonder if my friends at Bella Vista Elementary, first grade, Oakland, California are here, who I just saw in person 45 minutes ago.
They were probably lying to you about whether they were coming or not.
Yeah, they're like, we get it.
Yeah, we're coming to that for sure.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. We can't wait to see you again.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Tell us if in the chat, if you're just joining us, tell us where you're coming from and tell us how many students are watching with you so we can get a good sense of how many people are here and just make everyone real nervous. Okay, so we will get started. I'm so happy to be here for Storyteller Spotlight for February 2024. My name's Kaya Heisey. I am here from Mackin, and I will be the host of today's event.
Oh, were we
Special hey, I'll let you know. Our special thanks to Candlewick for helping us put this together. As a side note, 3 classes will be picked today to win a set of the Shapes books. And so you just have to be here live and then you'll be entered to win. But that's courtesy of Candlewick. All right, let me quickly introduce Mac and Jon. Mac Barnett is a best-selling author of stories for children. His work has been translated into more than 30 languages and sold millions of copies worldwide. Mac's books have won many prizes. He's the co-creator with Jon of Shape Island, a stop-motion animated series based on their best-selling Shapes series of picture books. Mac lives in Oakland, California. And Jon Klassen, not skipping you, Jon, is the creator of the award-winning book, I Want My Hat Back. He returned with another hat and another thief in This Is Not My Hat, which won the Caldecott medal. Jon has worked as an illustrator for movies, for music videos, editorial pieces. Originally from Niagara Falls, Ontario, Jon now lives in Los Angeles. Welcome, Jon and Mac.
Hi, everybody.
I'm going to hand it over to Jon and Mac to tell you a little something for a few minutes about their new stuff, and then we'll go into the Q&A portion. So just to prep everyone, we're going to use the Q&A button in Zoom to add our questions in. So find it now, and then as you want to, you can start adding questions in. Tell us the name of the student who asked the question so that we can call that out. All right, I'm going to disappear now and just leave you with Jon and Mac.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Mac.
I'm Jon.
And it's so wonderful to be with you right now. Beaming across the internet to wherever you are. I'm in Oakland, California. That's where I live.
I'm in Los Angeles, California. That's where I live.
And, Jon and I make books. Sometimes we make books together. Sometimes we make books separately, but that's what we do. We make books, and we figured, hey, since we're here and since you're all out there just staring at us, maybe we could read you one of our books right now. So I think we have Triangle, don't we? Do we have Triangle loaded up on that slideshow?
Are we going to hold it up? What was the thought?
I know we got the slideshow, but I don't know if they were counting on me to screen share.
I don't get it loaded up, but I can get it, or you can just hold it up.
Yeah.
Do you have it? I have it.
You have it?
Uh-huh.
Just hold it up. I'll read.
Okay.
We got
Mac,
it.
the windows are all big. I can see that you shaved today and you look very nice and smooth.
Thank you. I did shave today. And that's a rare thing, by the way. That was for Mackin.
Yeah. I shaved this morning and this is already what I look like.
Wow. So rugged.
I know.
Triangle
Mhm.
by us. First thing you're going to see on the first page, Triangle is there waving. You can wave back at him. You don't have to. No pressure, but why not?
He likes it.
Triangle. This is Triangle. This is Triangle's house. This is Triangle in his house. And that is Triangle's door. One day, Triangle walked out his door and away from his house. He was going to play a sneaky trick on Square. He walked past small triangles and medium triangles and big triangles. He walked past shapes that weren't triangles anymore. They were shapes with no names. We're going to bask in that. Oh, thank you. Oh, I can hear Bella Vista applauding from my house. That's cool.
Okay, we've got lots of questions that came in while you were reading, so let's start. I'm going to leave again, but you will hear my voice. All right, let's get our first question. Remember to put your questions in the Q&A part. Have your teacher do it for you. First question. Demi in second grade asks, where do you get your ideas for your books?
You know, I think that authors, we don't have like special idea brains or any secrets about this. It feels just like you all feel when you get an idea. You know, when you're walking around thinking, looking at stuff, sometimes an idea pops into your head. And that's what it feels like when we get ideas too. It's just we stick with those ideas and we test them out and think them over and we turn them into books. But I think the thing that authors are good at is I think authors tend to be really good noticers. And so when we're walking around, we're always noticing the things that are interesting to us, and really thinking about that stuff. And that's that kind of paying attention as you're walking around. That's how the ideas come.
You know what else is the thing? These books are good examples of how this works, is that usually you don't have an idea that's brand new. Most of the time, if you have an idea, it started with something that wasn't your idea at all. Like the Shapes books were sort of like that, where we started with the Shapes books. We thought, well, you know, it'd be fun is to have like 3 shapes and they all look pretty much the same. They all have eyes and maybe some of them have feet and stuff, but they don't look like they're doing very much or they're thinking very much. And so we did circle and we put Circle's eyes right there, right? Circle's eyes would go right in the middle where they fit. And we didn't invent a circle, right? We just picked a circle from a circle that we learned about. We all learned about circles. And so we didn't invent that. That wasn't our idea. And then we thought we should do a square. And so we put Square's legs right there. We put his eyes right there. And again, that square wasn't our idea. We knew of squares. And so we've used him as our character. But then we had to do triangle. And with triangle, you can't put Triangle's eyes in the middle of him because there's not enough room. If you want his eyes to be the same size as squares and circles, you have to put them down lower where they fit. And that means that Triangle looks a little sneakier. And that was our idea, was that once we saw that inside a triangle, the way we wanted him, that his eyes had to be down lower, our idea was that he was sneakier. But that's the first idea we had. Look, all of these other things about these characters weren't our idea. They were old ideas or ideas that we'd seen. Squares and circles and triangles are simple shapes we wanted to use. But don't worry that you don't have brand new ideas that no one's ever had before. If you're working off of things that you just like or have heard of, and then you add something to it, like where triangle's eyes would go, that can be your idea. So they come from all over the place.
Sarai asks, how long have you been writing books?
I've been writing books as a job for 20 years. But before writing books was my job, in like first and second grade, I used to love to just make books. I would make up stories and I would write all the words by hand and draw all the pictures myself and then staple them together. And I think that's when you become an author. The first time you make a book, not because it's your homework or because somebody told you to, but just because you feel like it. You just feel like making a story. That's what authors do. Even sometimes I come out to my desk here and I can't think of anything to write, or I'd rather be doing something else. On some deep level, I still just love making up and telling stories. And I've been doing that since I was all your ages.
Yeah, first book I remember writing was in third grade. It was a book about a ghost who lived in a cave and he wore a big medallion, and there was a little boy who had to steal his medallion and run into the cave and get it. And I made pictures to go with it because I didn't know how to write half the things that I could draw. And I think that was the first time I'd made a book that I could think of. It had pages you could turn and everything. But it's still the job, is still drawing things you can't write and writing things you can't draw is still exactly what the job is.
Landon in second grade asks, how long does it take to write a book? And then how long does it take to draw the pictures? And I'm going to add Gracie's question too. How do you draw the pictures?
Oh, right.
Well, writing the book,
Mac.
I think that like this, Jon writes his own book sometimes too, and I think we're very similar. You never know how long it's going to take. Sometimes it can be really, really fast, especially that first draft, the first version of it. You usually, even if you're able to write that, like the fastest would be like in one day. And that's pretty rare. And even if it happens in one day, you still sit with it and look at it and you revise it, you change it, and you look at it for months. But other times, even a very short book can take years to write. We just work on them until we get it right. So I would say somewhere between 1 day and 4 years to make the words. And then the pictures, Jon, how long does that usually take you?
The pictures are less unpredictable. Mac's right. For me too, when I write my own books, sometimes those books have taken like half an hour to write. You think about them for a long time, but the writing can be very short. And then other books of the same length, you just don't get it right, and they can take 4 years. That's exactly right. So it's very unpredictable. But with pictures, you can plan it out a little more. You can think, okay, first we're going to do the roughs, and the roughs can look like a mess. I have some stuff here I can show you guys where the roughs can look like this. They're just like a bunch of little drawings like this with text underneath explaining your idea or writing down what the page is going to be. They don't have to look like anything, but you know what's going on in those pages, and no one else is ever going to see these unless you show them on webinars like this. So you don't really have to worry about it. You're just telling yourself the story and making sure that it all fits into the pages. And so it can look really messy. It doesn't look like anything. It's just a bunch of notes. And then once that's done, you do a slightly less messy version of that to show the publisher, to show Mac, or just to make sure that everyone knows what you're going to do. And then once those are done, I have a way of making the final pieces where I do a lot of weird like puzzle pieces on separate pieces of paper. And then I either photograph or scan them into the computer and then make the puzzle, put the puzzle all together in the computer. So right now I'm working on something for Mac where we have to do a bunch of hats actually, and a bunch of faces. And so what I've done in the last week is I did something like this, where I color a bunch of hats that I like. And this is even, I haven't even figured out how I'm going to color these yet. What I have next to here is I say, this was a Prismacolor marker. And so I write Prismacolor here. And this was something called Crayola Super Tips, which you can get at Target for like $1. And I like that one actually. And I want to figure out, what am I going to use to draw this book? I make all these samples and right underneath the tools that I use to make those shapes. But then I'll scan that in, and I'll scan this little face in and then put that face in the computer underneath the hat so that it all looks like it fits together. But I'll make like 10 of those faces before I find one that I like. And so just because you've been drawing for a long time doesn't mean the first thing you draw is the thing you wanted to draw. Try and draw, when next time you're drawing, try and draw 10 faces, but try to make them exactly the same. It's very hard to do. And you're going to find one of those 10 faces that you actually think turned out the best. And you're not quite sure why it turned out the best or what you did. It just happened that way. And a lot of illustrators work like this, where you think that they're drawing the thing they want to draw, but they've actually done 4 of those and they just pick their favorite. And that's what I do too. And it's really nice because it means that you don't feel as pressurized to make the perfect drawing. No one can make the perfect drawing. And so you try and do the best you can and circle your favorite one. And so all the pieces of the drawings look like this at first. And then I put the puzzle together later. It's really fun.
Gabriel in 3rd grade is wondering, what are your favorite shapes?
That's a good question. I do like triangles a lot. I think it's a great shape. I believe that is the fewest sides that you can have and still have a shape.
Right.
And that's pretty cool. At least in our Euclidean universe.
All right. I like a triangle too, but I like it because you can draw a triangle and not draw the triangle you intended, and it's still technically a triangle. Like if I try and draw a square, I'll draw a square right now. If I try and draw a square, I'm going to try my best. Now, a square, the definition of a square is that all those sides are equal, right? So if I just draw a square like that, it's pretty close, right? Pretty close to a square. But I bet if we measured it with the most exacting ruler in the whole universe, it wouldn't be a square. That I made maybe this side longer than this side or something. And so then it turns into a rectangle. It's not a square. And the same thing with a circle. As a circle, you try and draw a circle. You'll practice and practice and try and get it right. And that's, that's about as good as I can do. But that's probably not a circle.
It's really good,
It's not bad. It's not bad. But I'll bet it's more of an egg or more of like some sort of oblong, no-name shape. But a triangle, even if I want to make a triangle with all the sides the same length, if I can't do that, if we took our magic ruler that can measure things exactly and measured all the sides of those triangles, it looks like probably this side is a little longer than the other ones. But guess what?
Still a
triangle.
Yeah.
I think that's why they're very forgiving shapes. Not like our character. I don't think Triangle, the character, is very forgiving of anything.
He's not a forgiving person.
No. But as a technical shape, I like them best for that.
Jacob is wondering how you two started working together. And then Vera is wondering how you agree when you write together.
Well, those are great questions.
Yeah.
So John and I became friends before we started working together, which is kind of unusual. If you see a book in your classroom or in the library and it has a different author and illustrator, if 2 different people made it, most of the time, the author and the illustrator didn't talk to each other when they were making the book. And a lot of the time, they never, ever meet, even after the book comes out. That's the most common way. Technically, usually, there's a rule that the author and illustrator aren't supposed to talk to each other while they're making the book. But John and I don't work that way because we're friends. We talk to each other all the time anyway. We became friends because we found out that we both loved some of the same books when we were growing up. We found out that we both loved the Frog and Toad books. And when we found that out, we said, well, that we're going to be friends. We both love those books so much. And we still talk about those books all the time. John, you want to answer that second question?
I forget what it was.
There's the one about like, how do we agree on what goes in the book?
Yeah. Well, Triangle is a great example of that because we did sort of, sometimes, most times, I would say, how we work on books that we do together is that Mac writes them by himself. He will write the text. He likes to go away by himself. And that is a good way to write. It's nice to write by yourself and to make all your weird little mistakes and get to fix them by yourself or follow your nose, and all that stuff is fun to do by yourself. But sometimes we do sort of weigh in on each other's books and we show each other our work while we're doing it. And Triangle, we did sort of write together some of the pages. I can't remember how this story started. We had the characters
Well, we
already.
were just talking about how it started, we cracked it because we'd been talking about the characters for a long time. And then We were like, man, like this book could be so simple. It could just be about Triangle going and playing a trick on Square. That could be the whole book. Is he goes over to Square's house, plays a trick on him, and then gets chased back to his own house. And we're like, yeah. And we started telling the story. And I think Jon and I both were picturing the same book in our head. We went through the beats of how it would unfold and how you would sort of, this book, it sort of works like a rubber band. You stretch it, you stretch it, you stretch it, and then boom, you snap it all back.
And he runs back to his house. That's right.
That way. And a weird thing happened. Then we hung up the phone after talking about how this book would work, and I went off and I wrote the book. But Jon also went off and wrote the book too. And most of our book, because we had talked about it and even talked about some of the lines, most of our book was the same. It was different in a few places. And one place that was different was that Jon wrote a sentence in the book because he just wanted to give himself time in this middle portion of Triangle's journey to have some time to draw some things and make this transition from triangles to squares. He wrote, "They were shapes with no names." And I thought that sentence was so cool and so pretty. It's my favorite sentence in the book, but
it's mine too, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't write that one. Jon wrote, and I was like, that is so cool.
I think though that this, I'm sure there's not a lack of lesson ideas out there for classes, but it's a very interesting thing to collectively decide on a story, how a story kind of roughly goes, and then go off and write what you remember you all agreed on. But everyone write it alone. Go by yourself and write the thing you thought you all agreed on, because you are going to change it. You're going to tell yourself the story again, and you're going to do specific things to it. A lot of what being a writer is that you have an idea for a story, but really it's the putting it on the pages and the small changes that you make that make it your book and make it what you're going to do with it. It's actually really important to being a writer is what you do in that second stage.
That's story exactly right. Yeah. What is the way that you tell a story? What's the version that you would tell that no one else would tell? What's your personality? That's what you're trying to do. You are trying to get your point of view into a story. And that's what's so cool. It
turns out I'm better at Mac than that, is what Mac is also saying. It's
for one sentence,
Lisa in 5th grade asks, were you thinking of becoming something else before you became an author and an illustrator?
Yeah, I was, and it was mainly because I didn't really know. I wanted to be an author, but I wasn't sure how you did it, or even if it was actually a real job, because I had never met an author. Nobody in my family was an author. Mackin hadn't put on a wonderful visit like this for me, so I didn't know it was real. And so I always had ideas of like, okay, if this doesn't work out, if it turns out that you can't be an author, maybe I better have another job. My main thing that I was going to do, my main fallback, I was going to become a medievalist. And if you don't know what a medievalist is, that's a job where you read books that are 1,000 years old and befriend an owl who comes and visits you.
And you make turkey legs for people on weekends.
That's right. That's right. And luckily though, I started writing and it worked. And that's, I want to just tell everybody here, it's a real job. Being a writer is a real job. You can do it.
I had a job. I went to school for animation, which isn't totally different than making books, but I wanted to work at animation studios. I'd been watching Disney movies and other animated things, and I thought, people who make those movies, that's the job I want. I'm going to go to school for that. And I did go to school for that, and I did get a job doing that kind of thing. I worked at animation studios for about 8 years. I worked at DreamWorks. I worked on movies like Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon. And I worked on Coraline. I did a lot of the sets and props and things for Coraline. And then I came back and worked on other movies for a lot of years. And then in the evenings, I started doing drawings of my own, just for ideas I had that were small. And I started wanting to make those into books, but I didn't know that making books was a job. No one had told me that. But then I started to get books published, and I thought maybe this could be my job all the time. And so I left the animation studios thinking, well, I'll just make some books and see how it goes, but I'll probably have to go back and work at the studio some more. And that's okay too. It's a fun job. And that was about 12, 13 years ago, and I have not gone back. That's my job now, and it's still my job. So you can have, and people who do illustrate, I imagine people who write full time have the same thing where you can have lots of different jobs. It's not like you have to pick one job and that's your job for your whole life. People who draw for a living have to do lots of different things, and they do want to do different things. You work in video games, you work in movies, you work on books, you work in all sorts of stuff. And I've certainly done all those things too. It's really fun. But books is my favorite job. And so I always end up going back to it.
Bentley asks, what is your favorite thing about working together and writing together?
Jon?
Mac, okay, you'll find this when you have friends that do things that you want to do with them and stuff too, is that there's always one friend who's much braver than the other friend. There's always one friend who's like, I think we can do this. I think we can do it actually way bigger and better than we even thought at first. And then the other friend is like, I don't know. I'm not sure we should even try this. I think we should probably just go home and make some sandwiches and try something much smaller. And he's like, no, we should do the big thing. Let's go. Wake up, get up. And Mac is the brave one. I'm the one who's standing at the edge of the cliff being like, I'm not sure we should go down here. And Mac is like, we should definitely go down here. And that's my favorite thing about working with Mac, is that I end up jumping off of a whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't jump off of normally. And it's very important to have a friend like that who pushes you like that and makes you better.
That's so funny that you said, because like I think also, Jon, like for me, you're one of my, I just love talking to you about ideas, because when I talk to you about an idea, not even an idea for a story, but just thoughts that I have, we will have a conversation where you will push me 3 or 4 levels deeper as we explore that thought or idea or train of thought or argument or thing about the world. And I will end up thinking more carefully and more deeply about it, because you have pushed the conversation to keep going and going.
Well, it's easy to do when you're the one out there. Like if you have a friend who goes into a cave and the friend is calling back being like, I don't see anything cool yet. And I'm outside the cave being like, you should keep going. There's probably more stuff in the cave. Then like, I don't mind being the guy at the mouth of the cave, eating sandwiches, shouting to keep going. And that's where you are.
I feel like you're in the cave.
I'm usually dragged into the cave too. That's true.
Well, that went by so fast, but that was our last question. Thank you everyone for watching with us. Now would be a great time to go over to the chat and tell Jon and Mac anything you want to tell them and thank them for coming. Jon, Mac, is there anything you want to say to the young people watching before we sign off?
Thank you guys for coming and watching us answer questions and asking us questions and stuff. We're so glad you like the books and that you listen to us talk about them.
Yeah, it's so that's right. I think our favorite thing to do is to talk about books, and so to get to be here talking about books with all of you, it feels very special. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, teachers, next month we've got Kate DiCamillo, so make sure you go and sign up for this Storyteller Spotlight happening on March 6th. You can find all the info about it on mackin.com. Thanks, everyone. It was so fun to be with you. You asked amazing questions. I wish I could have asked more. This recording will be on mackin.com for everyone to watch. Bye.
Thank you, Kaya.
Bye.